Okay, Chris Chinnock here at NAB 2014. I'm in the goHDR stand in the Futures Park area. And what we're looking at here is a demonstration of a high dynamic range. So on the left, what you can see, there's a light that's shining down on a little train, this train right here. That's a very obviously a very bright spot, and it may be blooming in the camera shot that you can see, or maybe washing out. But in back of it is actually a high dynamic range display, which is actually blocked by this light right here. But the train is visible through that light, as well as all the dark areas in back of it. On the right is a laptop. That's processing this image, which is coming from the camera, and it allows you to change the exposure level. Basically, there's like kind of a slider. So you've got, I think, about 16 stops in the original, and what we're showing on the laptop is the ability to move an 8-stop region from high to low. So you can see right now it's in the dark range. And as you move the slider up, you can increase. You're moving that 8-bit range up a little bit, and now it's of course overexposed. The point is, you can never get the same exposure level on a laptop, on a normal display, as you can get with a high dynamic range display. So the way this works is you use a. They are using basically a more standard camera system. It's actually a 1080p camera with a small lens on it, which is capturing the scene right here. It's 1080p camera that runs at 60 frames, but what their software does is modify that, so it takes 3 exposures within that 60 frame rate: an underexposure, a normal exposure, and an overexposure. And the choice of the over and underexposure range is very scene dependent. On average, it's probably a bracket of about 2.5 stops, but it can be higher or lower than that. Again, scene dependent. The wider the gap, the less fidelity you're going to get in the range, but you may need that because of the very high brights and the very low darks that you're particularly looking at. The bottom line is, HDR is one of these technologies that's got to have, it's getting a lot of interest from a lot of companies. Technicolor is doing something, Dolby is doing something, and goHDR is also involved with a European group called the Cost Action ICT, IC1005. That's kind of a consortium of companies that's working with JPEG. MPEG to create some standards. That's an ongoing task right now. So goHDR will be one of the companies that will propose a standard. I'm sure Technicolor and Dolby will also propose something, as well as some other companies. But the whole idea is to develop a method for capturing, well, preferably for transporting the high dynamic range information. And the problem that they're trying to solve is when you take these brackets of exposures, you create a tremendous amount of data. I think it was on the order of 2.5 gigabytes per minute. How much? 42 gigabytes of data per minute if you do an exposure at 60 frames per second. So that's obviously way too much. And you can't really use standard compression methods because you have no way to recapture that information. The approach that goHDR is proposing is that you don't want to lose that information. You want to deliver that information to the end user, whether that's a post-production facility, a broadcast facility, or even the consumer themselves. Another approach, for example, what Sony is doing, they have a high dynamic range camera, but what they do is they actually do the tone mapping at the camera itself and deliver a tone mapped image as an output. Now, tone mapping is, according to the goHDR definition, means having a way to transform the high dynamic range image into a perceptually equivalent image that captures the wide luminance ranges, but also takes into account how our perception of colors change over those wide luminance ranges. So it's both luminance and chroma that has to be factored into the tone map. The problem is tone maps can be developed by different companies. It's an algorithm, and each of those algorithms is going to be can be good or better depending on this particular scene you're looking at. So there's a wide variety of tone maps that can be developed and a wide variety of qualities that can be processed or developed. So the idea of, well, perhaps the best idea is to have a standard that delivers the original data and let companies then create their own tone maps that are scene dependent. So the content creator has the ability to choose the tone map that they need for that particular scene. But I think that's pretty much the story, and I'm going to stop it right there. Chris Chinnock for Display Central.